Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Green Flag. I'm your host, Lukas Wacker, and with me, as always, we have Kyle Cushman. And just when we thought the news storm was done, it has fired back up again as F1 has got a ton of different news to talk about today. And along with NASCAR, we've got a couple of silly season notes that we weren't expecting this week as well. So just when we thought that it was all settling down here after the Monday episode, it revamps right back up. So plenty of news to talk about today. So before we get into that, how you doing today, Kyle, after a busy week?
I'm loving it. I'm not going to lie. I thought that this was going to be like a slow week. Going to be fun because we're going to a new layout, a very different circuit for Formula One this upcoming weekend. But the amount of news has just been fantastic. I'm loving it. It's probably going to be like one of our last big news weeks. But then again, I think we've said that like 2 or 3 times at this point. So
I know.
Who even knows at this point? But yeah, doing good. I'm loving the news and very exciting weekend coming up for racing.
Yeah, no doubt. But we get to start off today's episode with a bit of a happier tone for the first time in what seems like a little bit here. After a crazy wreck that was on Sunday in the Bahrain Grand Prix where Romain Grosjean, if you haven't seen it, it's pretty spectacular images and video that were released, and he miraculously is still alive and with us today due to the incredible safety measures that are in Formula One and in motorsports today. He was released from the hospital, and he was at the circuit today as well. And he was able to thank everybody that saved his life, from the marshals to the safety workers to the medical car driver. It was just such a heartwarming scene, and he is very thankful from everything that we've seen from his social media posts. He's been staying active on it with very limited access with his hands for the most part, but nonetheless, he's done an amazing recovery so far, and we're hoping that he's back for the Abu Dhabi Grand Prix to end off his Formula One career on a happier note instead of the way that it's tentatively going out right now. But very positive to see that Romain Grosjean is back out of the hospital, and he is with the team, and he's been able to kind of move past those rough couple of days there for him, Kyle.
Oh, it's amazing. And it's great to see him in such high spirits as well. Just being in kind of a lighthearted, joking manner, both at the track, on social media. It's great to see for somebody that had such an unbelievable crash just a few days ago, to not only be out of the hospital that quickly, but to be back at the track, be talking with the people who helped save his life, be interacting with everybody and everything on social media as well. It's been great to see, and I think it's important as well for him to be back around as well, as his Formula One career comes to a close here in these next couple of weeks.
Yeah, I'm just very happy that he's still with us.
Yeah.
And we talked about that at length on the Monday episode where we broke it all down and just our thoughts on the entire incident that it was. And we're happy to see Romain Grosjean moving around and in very high spirits, as Kyle said there. And we're looking forward to seeing him most likely at the track in Abu Dhabi, whether that's in the car or just in the paddock itself. We're hoping that Romain Grosjean is going to get 100% healthy. And if he is back for the Abu Dhabi Grand Prix, that is just going to be one of the great comeback stories of this entire season, entire year that is desperately needed in 2020. It's been a rough year for everybody. It would be a great way to end the 2020 season with Romain Grosjean behind the wheel, but he's done everything in his power to do that so far, and we'll see if the next week and a half or so that transpires for him to get back behind the wheel of the Haas F1 car. So bit of a positive note to start this episode. That felt good. But on Monday night for myself, and it was late for you as well, breaking news out of the paddock as Lewis Hamilton, the current world champion, won it in Turkey, won this past weekend in Bahrain, tested positive for COVID-19. He will not be racing in the Sakhir Grand Prix this upcoming weekend for Mercedes. I mean, I don't know how, or this is basically the epitome of 2020 right here in this breaking news story. The guy that's on top of the world is going to set to break records even more this weekend with most laps led that we talked about on Monday and a whole bunch of other things. And he's going to try and tie the all-time record for wins in a season. That is no longer possible for Lewis Hamilton as he's tested positive for this deadly virus, and hopefully he's doing well. He's self-isolating in Bahrain It seems like he has mild symptoms from what we've heard so far. So we're hoping that Lewis, first and foremost, gets back to full health and he's staying well during this, I imagine, difficult time to be out of a race car when he's destined to probably finish the season off with, more consecutive wins here. But it's the opportunity of a lifetime for somebody else, and that proved to be George Russell, as he's going to be replacing Lewis Hamilton this upcoming weekend, swapping from the Williams seat that is the back marker team, going all the way to the front of the grid, hopefully, for George Russell this weekend in the most dominant car in probably F1 history here. He's going to go in probably the best car on the grid in Lewis Hamilton's seat. So a huge opportunity here for the second-year Formula One driver in George Russell, F2 champion in 2018. He's got great accolades to go along with this. He's been a Mercedes reserve driver for a couple of years before he got the Williams seat. So he has a relationship with the team in the past, and he's all but destined to go there at some point in his career, maybe even in 2022 when either Hamilton retires or they want to shake things up for the next-gen car. But George Russell is going to be replacing Lewis Hamilton, and then Jack Aitken will be replacing George Russell in the Williams seat this weekend. So a trickle-down effect that carried from the top of the grid to the back of the grid from Mercedes to Williams, Kyle. I mean, just incredible news. Obviously, we're wishing Hamilton the best, but this is going to be one heck of a weekend for somebody like George Russell to make a name for himself in Formula One.
Oh, the trickle down went even further because even the F2 seat that Aitken was in had to be replaced as well. So it went literally from the top of the grid in Formula One through to the back of the grid in Formula One and even to a Formula 2 seat as well. That's when you know there's a lot of dominoes falling into place for this one. But yes, before we really dive into things, first of all, most importantly as well, best wishes to Lewis Hamilton. Of course, he's a top-level athlete, and we've heard that it's mild symptoms, so we expect him to make a full recovery. But even still, it is a deadly virus that can have lingering symptoms as well. So best wishes to him and his recovery here. But in terms of the on-track consequences of this, I believe it was at the beginning of the season. At some point, Hamilton was asked, who can stop you this year? And his answer was, the only thing that can stop me is COVID, essentially. And sure enough, the only one that can stop him from breaking all these records this year is, in fact, COVID. So as you mentioned there, kind of the epitome of 2020 right there. This guy soaring on all cylinders, set to break all of these records, single season, career, all this kind of stuff, and comes slamming to a halt because of COVID. And thankfully it doesn't have any impact on like the championship or anything like that, because that would be,
if it was a tight
awful
championship battle, it would just be heartbreaking.
Exactly. So but yes, opportunity of a lifetime for George Russell here. We know, or we expect at some point in the future for him to be a full-time driver for Mercedes, just given he's been a Mercedes development driver. He's done plenty of tests. He's been a reserve driver at that team. The ties are obvious, and they've been there even with him being at Williams for these last couple of seasons now. And so when the news came down, it was basically, okay, Russell is almost certainly going to be the first choice here. Will Williams allow it? Because earlier this season, when Mercedes was talking with Bottas about re-signing, talking with potentially George Russell stepping into that seat, Williams basically said, not yet. In that situation, and they didn't hold him back a second time here. Granted, it is kind of different ownership at this point, but it's good to see that they're allowing him to take that step up, to take this opportunity. And yeah, as everyone has said, it's the opportunity of a lifetime. You're literally stepping into the world championship seat in the middle of the world championship season that car has won. Like, it's unheard of circumstances for anybody. And not just that, it's going from the worst car on the grid to the best car on the grid. It's going to be lofty expectations, certainly. But we've seen this year that people dropped into a seat in kind of unexpected circumstances have been able to perform fairly admirably. And you look at what Nico Hülkenberg was able to do in his 2 races this season. Did he match the performance of the full-time Racing Point drivers? No, but what he was able to do was he was able to get points and do it in a fairly solid manner versus everybody else in that tight midfield battle. So going into this weekend, Russell's going to have lofty expectations, just given the pedigree that he has as a driver, his qualifying record as well, which will be on the line, which is kind of funny there. And then obviously the race itself. So very excited to see how George Russell does this weekend. There's going to be a learning curve. It's going to be interesting to see how they use the free practice sessions and whether they just kind of send Russell out on hard tires and just let him go until the tires basically burn off, just to get as many laps as he can in that car and get adjusted to things. Because I'm sure that there's going to be a big difference between the Williams and the Mercedes there. But what an unbelievable turn of events to blow this entire Sakhir Grand Prix wide open.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of speculation on who could take that seat before Russell filled it. You know, there's a lot of names thrown out there. Stoffel Van Dorn is the tentative reserve driver for Mercedes, so you would think that he would get the possibility of driving the car this weekend, but he's doing a Formula E season for Mercedes, and the test down, where's the test? In Valencia, yeah. So they're busy doing that, so he's going to be in Bahrain this weekend, but he didn't get the nod. Mercedes' first priority here was George Russell. People threw out Nico Hülkenberg's name as super sub.
That was always going to be
basically the Regan Smith of NASCAR, of the F1 world in some sense here. But that was a bit of a outside shot for Hülkenberg to go from the Pink Panthers of Racing Point that he has stepped in 3 times, I think it is, this season for Perez.
Yeah, he stepped in 3 times, but the one race did not start. So it's essentially 2 races. 2
races essentially for Hülkenberg, but nonetheless, it's a great opportunity for George Russell. I am pumped for this weekend just to see what Bottas does in response to this kind of move that Mercedes has made here. Mercedes made the phone call to George Russell after they made the news, so it was just all about talking with Williams and making sure that it was okay with them that they could bring in Russell, because obviously he was their first choice, which is crazy to think that the reserve driver would not be their first choice when you look at Fittipaldi taking Grosjean's seat for this upcoming weekend. So, and he's their reserve driver. So it's definitely some interesting tactical moves by Mercedes here. It's a great opportunity for George Russell to get like a mini test session here for Mercedes and just try and put his skills up against Bottas, because that's probably what the future may hold in terms of a battle for that second seat if Hamilton continues to stay with the team. If not, then we're looking at something different. But huge opportunity here for George Russell and Jack Aitken to make his F1 debut as well. I mean, we can't forget about the lonely Williams at the back of the grid. It's still a great opportunity for him. It's going to be fun to see Aitken versus Latifi. I'm not putting too many high expectations on Aitken this weekend. It's just 3 different drivers are moving places. Russell's always going to be on the grid. He's a mainstay there. But Fittipaldi, Russell, and Aitken all moving places within Formula 1 and F2. And, I mean, this is just setting up for one heck of a Grand Prix with a track that is unknown to most of these guys. Some of them have raced this before, but nonetheless, I couldn't be more excited for this Sakhir Grand Prix with the amount of news that came out from Monday night. It was just a flurry of activity there. So, I mean, for George Russell, you can't put too big of expectations on him. I mean, Bottas has been racing for Mercedes since the Rosberg retirement in 2016. So he's been here for a while. He knows the car inside and out. Hamilton has just been that much better than him each and every season to make it seem like Bottas maybe isn't the most worthy of teammate to Hamilton, but Bottas is an exceptional race car driver, and we can't expect that Russell's going to go and bypass him here this weekend, even though it would be a great storyline. I'm hoping for it, to be honest, because I would love to see George Russell top step foot of the podium, honestly, after the Sakhir Grand Prix. But if I'm just looking for Russell to bring the car home in one piece. If he can get a podium, that's a huge accomplishment, in my opinion. When you look at the pace that Max Verstappen has each and every weekend, it's a huge opportunity for him to maybe go and challenge there, because he's always been kind of second fiddle to Hamilton this weekend. So I think that there's an opportunity for the Red Bulls to maybe sneak up here with a bit of a weakened Mercedes lineup than as it is per usual. So there is tons of different things to look forward to this weekend, with the top battle, the midfield battle still strong with the constructors. So we'll preview that in a little while. But what are you thinking here for George Russell on his debut for Mercedes here?
Yeah, just before I get to that here, it's tough not to feel for Stoffel Van Dorn in this case. Any other weekend or circumstance, and you would probably think that he would be in the seat. But given that this week was Formula E testing out in Valencia, and that is his main seat, he isn't just specifically a reserve driver for Mercedes like Pietro Fittipaldi is for Haas. He's not running any full-time series or anything like that. Van Dorn is the reserve driver for Mercedes, but he has that seat because he's also the main driver over for their Formula E team over there with Nick de Vries. So in that case, you feel for him, because if it's any other weekend, he's probably the one stepping into that situation here. But given he was out in Spain, it would be difficult to get him over here, tested, go through all the proper protocols in time to get seat fitting, get in the car, basically get adjusted to everything. It just made more sense in this situation to put Russell in, and not just because of all those extenuating circumstances as well, just because it's such a unique opportunity for Mercedes where you don't have to worry about points because you've got both the drivers and the Constructors' Championships locked up. So you don't need any mega performance from any super sub or anything like that. So you don't need to worry about that side of things. And you have this upcoming budding superstar that is your future face of the team once your current face of the team, Lewis Hamilton, eventually moves on. And you have the opportunity in the middle of a championship season with Hamilton out of the car to pit him up against the guy that he would either be replacing or be driving against in the future. Like, this is such a unique circumstance for Mercedes here. They have to take this opportunity. So you feel for Van Dorn in this case, because you look at his Formula One career and he got destroyed essentially by Fernando Alonso, but it's Fernando Alonso, and it was in some of the worst years of McLaren that we've seen. And that was his Formula One chance. He was out of that seat. He's gone over to Formula E and has helped build up that new Mercedes program over in that series, and will probably look to be one of the title favorites going into next season. So you feel for him in that case, because you felt like this maybe could have been an opportunity for Van Dorn to get back in and prove himself on that stage and maybe get a seat in the future. But feel for Van Dorn. But for George Russell, opportunity of a lifetime here to prove himself in a championship-winning car in the middle of a championship-winning season for that car against the guy that essentially he has to go out and beat for a job, you would think, coming into the future here. So expectations-wise, I don't think you can set the expectations of match or surpass Bottas. I feel like that's exceeding expectations in this case, just because the guy isn't used to this car. He's stepping in a few days' notice. Like, this is extreme circumstances for anybody, let alone somebody going from the back of the grid to the front of the grid, all these circumstances that we've already gone over here. So I think the expectation level should be where the Mercedes basically should be around, and that's looking at probably third, at the probably the low end of things in qualifying, maybe behind Bottas and Verstappen, but you would imagine that he would be above the rest of that kind of mid-pack plus Albon in that kind of group. You would expect him to slot in right around third there. That's kind of my expectation level. Anything lower than that would be disappointing. Anything higher than that, I think, would be exceeding expectations. And then on race day, probably something similar, right around a podium spot there in third. Unless obviously something happens in terms of mechanical failure or anything, because this is a unique track that we're going to, where it's going to be very power heavy. It's going to be very hard on these engines, and it's late in the season as well. So we could see quite a bit of attrition going into this race, but I think my expectation level is third, essentially, for the entire weekend here. For qualifying and for the race, I don't think you can set the expectation level of beating Verstappen or beating Bottas, just because those two guys have been in those top level seats all year long. They know the car inside out. They've been battling with each other all year long, and you're throwing this guy into this situation. So lower than third, I'll be a little bit disappointed. Higher than third, I think that's exceeding expectations.
Yeah, a front row lockout would be, incredible for Mercedes if they can continue that kind of role they've been on. They've got plenty of practice time too, so it's 3 practices. I'm sure he'll be comfortable enough in the car. Saying that though, he is a lot taller than Lewis Hamilton is, and he has to wear a size down on the shoe, is what I've heard from him this weekend. So he's not going to be the most comfortable in there. He's going to have to kind of squeeze into that Mercedes that is built for Hamilton. They can only do so much in terms of making him comfortable in the car. He's just going to have to tough it out for 3 days here, and I'm sure he'll do it. This could lead to opportunities for him in Abu Dhabi as well. If Hamilton is not cleared to race by then, we could.
And it's unlikely that Hamilton will be, just because of the protocols in place for Abu Dhabi as well. You have to have, I believe it is 4 or have been testing negative in Bahrain for 7 days, or have 4 negative tests before that weekend. And just given the timeline of everything here, it seems unlikely that will happen for Hamilton, unless it's going to be really cut and dry by that last couple of days there. So it's definitely going to be a close timeline, but you would expect, or at least my expectation is that Russell will also be in that seat for Abu Dhabi. But if Hamilton has a quick recovery, who knows? But just given the timeline of everything, and given that there isn't an extra week off or anything like that, it seems unlikely, because you look earlier in the season, and the comparable situation of this would be Sergio Perez earlier this year, and he did miss the back-to-back race weekends there when we were at Silverstone. So the comparable from earlier in the year was 2 missed weekends, and that kind of lays out similar timeline for here. So I would expect him to be in the seat, Russell that is, for Abu Dhabi as well, but remains to be seen.
Yeah, we're hoping for the best for Hamilton. I don't really want him to end the season. It's a great way to go out with a win in Bahrain if he is not able to finish the season, but we sure would like to see him in the season finale kind of thing, really celebrate his championship with burnouts, and really take it all in there, because it is the spectacle, the season finale. That's where you really get to celebrate it all. So we're hoping that Hamilton is back for then, but if not, Russell's got 2 chances here, because he's going to be in the car in Abu Dhabi. They made their bed here. They're not going to switch to Van Dorn next weekend in Abu Dhabi. This is their guy for the remaining 2 weekends, and Russell's expectations are going to be high, but we don't want to push it too high where it's just unattainable for him. It's going to be.
It needs to be realistic. It's expectations. It's supposed to be something that's attainable, realistic, and that's why we have the phrase exceeding expectations. It needs to be reasonable, and I feel like third in qualifying and the race is kind of that realistic expectation level. I don't know how you feel about that, though.
No, I agree. I think if he doesn't end up with a podium this weekend, something went wrong, because I think on outright pace, the Mercedes should be able to beat these guys.
We've seen it all year.
Saying that, though, Bottas did struggle to get through the pack on Sunday when he went to the back with the flat tire, and then only made his way up to, I think it was 8th position by the end of the Grand Prix. So when the Mercedes does get stuck in traffic, it does struggle. So if Russell has a poor start, but he's very, very good at starts. So we'll see if that comes into play as well. But if he gets stuck in traffic, I'm not going to get too bitter about it or anything like that. Like, it's just the way things go at this current generation, where it is difficult to overtake, especially with the long straights. You're not going to have the amount of time to really gain much momentum out of the corner. It's going to be very much a slipstream game, So I think this is going to be one heck of a Grand Prix. Probably the most excited I've been for a race in a while. The Turkish Grand Prix, I was pretty excited about it, because there was a lot on the line in terms of history and the unknown of the track. But based off of a new layout here, and the final new layout of the season that has been full of different kind of scenarios and racetracks that we've gone to for the first time, or the first time in a long time. This is the final one with that. So this is the last unfamiliar track for these guys, and we'll see if that has anything to do with the outcome of the race. Hamilton has won the majority, if not all, of the new layouts, I believe. So there's an opportunity here for somebody to sneak a win. Can Mercedes continue their streak of winning every single race except for the 70th anniversary Grand Prix of the season? Or will Verstappen, or maybe even somebody else, go up there and snag the win? But Russell, I am cheering for you. I'm sure Kyle is as well here. This is just the opportunity of a lifetime for this young man, and we're hoping for the best for him. And then on Jack Aitken, Kyle,
Yes.
a great opportunity for him as well to make his F1 debut. Saying that it is the lowly Williams car that will most likely be at the back of the grid, but nonetheless a huge opportunity here for another British driver to come into the grid. One comes out, one must go in.
Yeah, exactly. And just quickly here, don't forget about Monza there. Pierre Gasly getting the win as well. There's been a couple.
No, I'm not. I'm going into the weekend. I mean, like I couldn't have predicted Monza being as crazy as it was.
Okay. Hey, I just want to get.
We will talk about what our favorite races in the.
I just want to make sure the AlphaTauri boys get their due here. Okay.
They've had their due.
That being said, yes, very very excited for Jack Aitken here. It's been a really tough season. Campos and F2 have really struggled this year with some of the different changes to the cars this year, and just look at his performance. Not necessarily versus the rest of the grid, because then I think you'll see him down in, I think 14th it is, and maybe have some questions about his talent level. Look at the comparison versus his teammate. His teammate is down in 24th, has 0 points on the season, versus Jack Aitken, who has a couple podiums and is up at, I believe, 48 points there in 14th place. So Jack Aitken is a quick driver, and you can look at some of his results in the past and see that. Just last season in F2 with the same team, Campos, finished fifth in that season. Going back to GP3 back in 2017, finished second in that championship. So this is a guy that's been around Williams for a while. He's been that reserve guy for a couple of seasons now, and I'm excited to see him get this opportunity. I feel like he'll be able to, because he has done an FP1 earlier this season. I don't remember the race it was that he did FP1, but he has done it relatively recently as well. So this is a guy that at least has a little bit more familiarity with that seat than somebody like Russell does with the Mercedes seat here. And I'm excited to see how he does. This is a guy that, has shown speed in the past, but hasn't really had that next opportunity to step through into the F1 grid, and a great opportunity here to kind of show what he's got for a team that's probably a realistic expectation for him to go to in the future with Williams here, just given the ties that they've had for these last few years. And I feel like it's going to be a good battle between him and Latifi this weekend as well. I think qualifying should be very interesting between the two. And then in the race, who knows what can happen. Again, we expect maybe some engine failures or some technical problems, just given how tough this circuit will be on those power units and the penultimate race of the season as well. So it's coming down to the end of things for these power units as well. So maybe things open up as well. Maybe we see a few retirements, and maybe we get an interesting battle for maybe a point there for Williams coming to the end of the season here. But when everything started to go down with Hamilton going out with COVID, I think everybody was hoping to see Russell step up to Mercedes and Aitken step into Williams, and that's exactly what we're getting here. And I'm excited to see. Obviously, the main storyline will be how Russell does at Mercedes, but don't overlook Aitken at Williams. I think that's going to be a fun storyline to watch as well.
Yeah, I think in practice we could be looking at mechanical failures as well. Just
honestly,
I think that there could be
depends how many laps they run. Yeah,
some penalties going into the weekend, and we'll see how that unfolds after the qualifying. The grid is lined up, but there's definitely the practice is very much in play here. They're going to be very conservative. I feel like for some teams, just they know how much their power unit can handle. They've got all the data on it, so we'll see how hard they push it or how many laps they want to take with it. So there's a lot of different strategies going into this weekend, whether that's Mercedes trying to get Russell comfortable along with Williams with Aitken, or if you're somebody, in the midfield battle with trying not to ruin yourself for a bad starting position for for that third constructor's place that is still up for grabs if somebody makes a mistake or they have reliability problems there. McLaren or Renault could even pass Racing Point if they have a good weekend, and so on. So very, very exciting weekend coming up for the Formula One side of things. So is there anything else you want to touch on the whole driver swap here with Russell and Aitken in Hamilton?
Just finally here, and we'll probably talk about it a bit more once we get to our actual preview of the Sakhir Grand Prix. The one thing that I'm very interested to watch for Russell here going into this race is kind of that start. And we've seen him have great starts in the past, but this year It's been a little bit lackluster. He hasn't really been able to take advantage of the first lap opportunities, get a little bit higher up on the grid on the first laps. So he won't be able to afford that this upcoming weekend. He's going to need to sort that out. And obviously it might be a Williams thing, and maybe he steps in the Mercedes and just flies away. We don't really know. There's just so many unknowns going into this weekend, but it's things like that. It's things like the mental mistakes when it's coming down to those pressure situations, which we've kind of seen in his Williams tenure. When he gets close to getting that first ever point or getting into the points for Williams, we tend to see some mistakes from George Russell. And those aren't mistakes that we saw in the past when he was racing for championships, but they're mistakes we've seen when he's been racing for the backmarker team. So it's, again, there's so many things to watch going into this Grand Prix, but just one of those extra things is the start for me as well for Russell. And then when it starts coming down to crunch time, will he be able to get through cleanly, or will there be a mistake?
Yeah, I mean, there's going to be nerves. It's inevitable. I mean, when you're coming up to the grid for lights out after the formation lap, that he's going to be nervous, and we'll see if he's able to cope with that pressure and the nerves, or if he kind of fumbles underneath it. It's going to be a fascinating start. That's going to be most likely where the race is won. We'll see how overtaking is throughout the weekend. If there's a possibility for it, you'll look at the F2 race and see if they're able to overtake and kind of use that as a little bit of a comparable going into the Sunday's event. But it's a great start time as well, so I'm looking forward to that on our end.
Whole weekend, really. I'm excited for it. I'm going to be able to watch all of the weekend, free practices through to the race, and not have to wake up at like 4 a.m. for anything. It's going to be nice.
Is it at on TSN this weekend for practices and everything?
Usually free practices are on TSN.
I just never look at the free practices because it's at a
ridiculous time for you.
Yeah. So I don't even care, but I'll probably tape it and just and see.
Yeah, I believe the earliest thing this entire weekend is at like 8:30 Eastern, and that's, I think, free practice 1. Like qualifying, I think, starts at like,
for you, hey?
at like 12:30 for us over here. Like it's a great weekend. It's basically like almost as if we're getting like one like North American time zone race this year. It's at least one nice little silver lining to not having any Grand Prix over here.
Yeah, for sure. We'll talk about our picks and everything in just a little bit. So that does it for the Aitken, Russell, Hamilton, schmozzle that was over the past couple of days. But we still have plenty of stuff to talk about on F1 as the Schumacher name will be making its triumphant return to the F1 grid for the first time since 2012, as Mick Schumacher has officially been confirmed to drive for Haas F1 team after signing a multi-year deal with the organization. And alongside him, the widely speculated as well, Nikita Mazepin will join him and be the partnership over there at Haas F1 team. And beyond, he's also signed a multi-year deal with the team. So this is their future. This is their lineup moving forward for the next couple of years, at least for Haas F1 team, the American team. Picking a huge name in Schumacher to have them to be the 4th and 5th drivers, respectively, to drive for them after this weekend with Fittipaldi coming in. And Mazepin is also going to be the 4th Russian driver ever in Formula One to drive in the sport as well. So interesting stat there. Obviously, we've got Danny Kvyat in there now. Most likely will not be returning to the team next season, but we'll see on that. But the silly season for the Formula One side of things is definitely narrowing down after this. This was kind of the biggest, I guess you want to call it, question mark. It was basically confirmed coming into this weekend. We all kind of knew the storylines and speculation surrounding it, but huge opportunity here for Mick Schumacher and Nikita Mazepin, both drivers in F2 at the moment. Mazepin in 3rd in the championship standings, mathematically out of the championship hunt, and Mick Schumacher, who's leading the F2 championship going into the final weekend of their season with the feature race and the sprint race as well. So, I mean, how can you not love the Schumacher name back in Formula One? I was a little bit skeptical at times when he was coming up through the ranks. I followed him fairly closely because I just was a big Schumacher fan after the Cars movie debut. As you can see behind me, I've got the painting of Lightning McQueen at the end of the movie when he comes in on the Michael Schumacher Ferrari. I've always loved Schumacher. So I think this is for me, this is a great move. I'm really happy to see that Schumacher is making his dad proud and coming into this weekend, going into next season, excuse me. Obviously, he's going to be the big name to look at, but we can't forget about Mazepin as well coming in there as well. So what are your thoughts on the newly transformed Haas F1 team lineup in 2021.
Yeah, and we're really coming down to things in F1 silly season because I do believe there's only two more unconfirmed seats in
AlphaTauri and Mercedes.
Yes. Okay. So then technically three then, because like the AlphaTauri / Red Bull seat. So whatever's going to happen with those. So I guess technically three. So sorry about that. But yeah, and then whatever the hell is going to happen with Hamilton when he resigns. I still don't know why that's still dragging on. But nonetheless, yes, a tale of two stories, I think, with these two driver announcements. And you could tell kind of by the public kind of support for one move and then backlash against the other. And we'll start with the nice positive one in Mick Schumacher. And yes, we expect him to clinch that F2 championship this weekend, the final weekend for that championship here in Sakhir with the feature race and then the sprint race. He's got a 14-point gap back to second there, and Callum Ilott, who will not be in Formula One next year, which I'll get to in a second here. But yeah, Schumacher, it just made sense. In his entire career to this point has been get adjusted to things in the first year, and then in the second year, really find that next gear. And back to 2017 in F3 with Prima, 12th in his first season, second season in F3, won the championship. 2019 moves up to Formula 2 with Prima, finishes 12th. And funny enough, 2020, we expect him now in his second season here to finish first. So that being said, the main thing for Schumacher stepping into Haas is it's a team that currently is second last on the grid. They've really declined these last couple of years. It's going to be hopefully that team rebounding with a brand new driver lineup, maybe more Ferrari support or something like that, given that it's the Ferrari development driver now in that seat, which is something that we haven't seen for Haas versus something like Alfa Romeo where they have a specific seat for
I don't know if you want Ferrari's help right now.
Yeah, yeah, that's a whole different thing. But that being said, yeah, I thought that Schumacher would end up at Alfa Romeo. He's not there. He's going over to Haas, which is an interesting decision, to say the least. It's not what we've seen to this point for any Ferrari reserve or development drivers, excuse me, but it's an exciting one here. It's an American team, so having a Schumacher step into that, I'm sure will be exactly huge branding opportunity for Haas to get some sponsorship when they definitely need a lot of money. Just look at the second driver that they brought in. And then for Schumacher as well. But the main thing is going to be, again, just like we talked about with George Russell, keeping those expectations in check. We've seen Schumacher in his career to this point kind of struggle with things in the first year and then really find his groove in that second season. So I wouldn't expect that trend to change going into next season, which means there will be some growing pains at Haas next season with a full rookie lineup, which I think there is some things to say about that decision to go with two rookies there, given Schumacher and how much he has struggled in that first season in a new series. So for Schumacher, definitely some reserved expectations going to next season, but into the future, you would expect him to take that next step up in that second year. And that's why it's good to see that it's a multi-year agreement, which you would expect for a top prospect like Mick Schumacher. But I'm a bit surprised that they didn't wait to announce the Schumacher thing until after he wins F2, you would think, and you would imagine that announcing that you're bringing in the F2 champion would be a bigger announcement than saying, we're bringing in Mick Schumacher, and then he wins the championship, and then you're like, hey, our new guy won the championship. I thought that's how it would go, just kind of given that we've known Schumacher was in the seat for weeks now, and it hadn't been announced until this week, which is before the final two races of the F2 season. So that's a bit weird in that regard. But yeah, it just makes sense. He was going to be in F1. It was just whether it was at Alfa Romeo and Haas. And as soon as Alfa Romeo announced their lineup, we knew that he would end up at Haas. What we didn't know is what the second seat at Haas would be. And it's been announced, obviously, with the Schumacher one, that it will be Nikita Mazepin. And I don't think that you can have two announcements further on the ends of the spectrum in terms of public support for it, because Schumacher, he's got the name, he's got the F2 championship almost certainly. He's shown that he deserves the seat. And while Mazepin has shown definitely a step up in speed this season, there's a lot of extenuating circumstances around him that lead to making this a questionable decision at best, in my opinion. He isn't the best available driver, whether you look at F2 or veteran drivers. Obviously, if you're going for a veteran driver, you've got multiple different names available, whether you look at Hülkenberg, who almost certainly will not be on the grid again next season, Perez, who seems like he's going to be Red Bull or bust next season, or even somebody like Daniil Kvyat, who has former Ferrari ties. He's been a reserve driver for Ferrari in the past, and is looking like he will be out of an AlphaTauri seat as well, whether that'll be Albon going back down to AlphaTauri if Sergio Perez gets that Red Bull seat, or if Yuki Tsunoda gets the bump up to AlphaTauri, which we kind of also expect to see. So we expect Kvyat out of the seat. I think he could have been a decent veteran option there as well, given the former Ferrari ties. Or if you go back down to F2, why didn't you just go ahead and bring in the other Ferrari reserve driver in Callum Ilott as well? It's been a toe-to-toe battle between Schumacher and Ilott this season in F2. It would have been great to see them kind of make that step up, going to the same team as well if you did want to go to the rookie lineup. But instead, it's Nikita Mazepin, who has tons of baggage, which I don't even know if we want to get into today. But there's one thing that he brings, and it's money. That family has a lot of money to their name, and we've seen it in years past with some of these backmarker teams, specifically with Williams, the pay driver. And while Mazepin hasn't been bad or anything like that this season, he's been solid in third place. He's been good this season for sure. It's just, was he the best option available? Absolutely not. And is it going to be the best thing for Haas going forwards? I don't think you can say yes either, because they're going with an all-rookie lineup and going with a driver that, in Mazepin, that doesn't bring a whole lot to the table other than the money that he's bringing. And you've got Schumacher stepping in, who struggled in his first season in all of these different series these last couple of seasons. So it's shaping up to be another pretty rough season for Haas going to next season, which is why I don't get why they bring in Mazepin other than the dollars involved. And that's not even getting into all the baggage and everything that comes with Mazepin as well. So love the Schumacher move, of course. I don't think anybody will hate on that move. Big question marks around the Mazepin move. We'll see how it plays out going into next season. I can't remember the last time we saw an all-rookie lineup was Stroll and Sirotkin. Or no, because Stroll was in his second season then, because his first season with Massa. So even then,
I forget about Sirotkin.
Well, to that point, I think that the comparison for Mazepin is Sirotkin, because he was a pay driver that came into Williams that had a decent season in F2 the previous year. I think, actually, just looking it up here, in that final season, he finished third in F2 as well. So very similar in that regard there. Now, that being said, this season of F2 has been much more competitive than seasons in the past. You look at that season where Sirotkin finished third, and it was a battle between Gasly and Giovinazzi for the the GP2 championship at the time. And then Sirotkin was third, and everybody on down the list, you got to go a ways until you find another name that has been in and around that F1 kind of stratosphere recently. But I think that's a comparison for me going into next season is Mazepin and Sirotkin in terms of guys that have had solid seasons in F2/GP2, but bring a lot of money and probably won't bring results as well. So at least with Sirotkin and also the Russian as well. So there you go. There's a lot of different similarities there. But the main thing for me is with Sirotkin, unless I'm forgetting things, and I wasn't as big into F1 when he was in the series as well, so I could be mistaken here, but Mazepin just brings so much extra baggage as well, whether it's just so many different stories about questionable behavior from him, whether it's something relatively innocuous like losing the lead this season to Yuki Tsunoda on the last lap, or having a penalty to put him back to second place at Spa this season and losing to Yuki Tsunoda, and then driving into the second place kind of banner, whatever it's called there. Marker board. And then having it fall over and almost hit a couple people, or much more serious things like when he was in, I think it was in F3 when the incident with Callum Ilott happened, when he punched him after a free practice. So like there's a lot of different baggage with Nikita Mazepin. which makes the decision definitely questionable given the relationship that you can imagine that will happen between Gunther Steiner and him. I'm sure Netflix will be foaming at the mouth for some of those interactions, but yeah, a bit of a long-winded here thing, but love Schumacher. A lot of questions for me with Mazepin.
Yeah, fair enough. It's not necessarily what I would have done if I'm Haas. I think I would have gone about it probably a little bit differently in terms of how they did with Alfa Romeo and the Haas lineup. I probably would have put Schumacher over with Raikkonen for next season, and then I would potentially put Giovinazzi in the Haas.
That's what I would have done, yeah.
Along somebody like Hülkenberg. I think that would have been a great a pairing there. Or if you want to put Callum Ilott next to Giovinazzi, I think that would have worked as well. Some sort of combination so that Schumacher can learn from a veteran like Raikkonen. I think he would probably need the mentorship for next season. It would be a huge opportunity for him to have somebody like Raikkonen, the most experienced guy on the grid in F1 history, nonetheless, in a Italian car that is going to make waves in Europe in terms of the sponsorship deals and everything like that with the Schumacher name, driving Ferrari. I know Haas is technically, but it's American, so it's not necessarily the same. Alfa Romeo is the most aligned to the Ferrari big team that is in F1. So I think that would have made a bit more sense if you're going to do it. I don't want Giovinazzi out of F1. I would just move him down to Haas just so that he has a little bit more of a mentorship. And Giovinazzi's a little bit more experienced now too, so he can provide a little bit of mentorship as well to somebody like Ilott if he were to step in there. And if not, Hülkenberg would be a great match to have with him and Giovinazzi. So I would not have put Mazepin in Formula One next season, as you said, with all the baggage. And he's a fiery guy. He gets a bit hot-tempered. Reminds me of somebody in the Cup Series that I quite like. But I don't know. I just think when you look at the two-horse race and they've kind of separated themselves with Ilott and Schumacher by like almost 30 points it is to Mazepin, those are your two best drivers that are available in the rookie side of things. And it's not like Ilott's not a Ferrari junior driver. He is. It's just the money that Mazepin brings in. So, and you look at someone like Schwartzman, who's only a couple points behind Mazepin as well, and he was testing the car as well, and he's a rookie. So I think Schwartzman goes into next season as well with looking his chops a little bit, looking for that F2 championship. But nonetheless, I could not be more thrilled for Schumacher being back on a grid. Just the name itself. And he's very deserving of it now that he's going to hopefully seal the deal here in the F2 championship this weekend. I would not want anything to happen this weekend to try and jeopardize that where he just falls short or something goes wrong.
Yeah, well, what's unfortunate with the whole situation here is that it's better for Ilott to lose the championship so that he can stay or have the option to stay in F2 because he's not getting the seat. Like it's situations like this. Like I get why F2 has that rule and it makes sense to have that rule. It encourages teams to promote the drivers when they win the championship there in F2. It makes sense. But when you have situations like this where teams are making decisions before the championship's decided and you have two guys who are in the same development program, and if something happens for Schumacher and he has a bad weekend and Ilott smashes things, and let's say he wins the feature race and has a good sprint race as well, and Schumacher, let's say, has a couple issues and Ilott makes up the 14-point deficit and wins the championship, well, then he's not able to return to F2 and he has to find something different for next year. And it's just stuff like that, that just make me scratch my head. But money makes the world go round, and that's exactly why Mazepin's getting his seat. Schumacher absolutely deserves it. I would have waited until after the championships decided personally, but love to see that move there and agree with you with the kind of Haas Alfa Romeo switch around. I would have preferred to see a rookie there with Raikkonen and Alfa Romeo, and then probably Giovinazzi move over to Haas, stay in that kind of Ferrari umbrella, and then have somebody else with him. I just don't really see how that all-rookie lineup is going to give any kind of success for Haas when they've been on such a downward spiral, and I don't see it coming back up next season with a couple of rookies unless something miraculous happens.
Unless they're bringing a lot of money that can bring it back within the back half of the midfield, because it's in the bottom of the grid now. It's not even in the midfield battle.
Full stop.
Yeah. And it's just unfortunate that it's kind of turned out this way. Part of it has to do that Ferrari has just been on a downward spiral as well this season, and then that has a translation to their other affiliated organizations. So part of that has to do with that. I think if Ferrari steps it up a little bit next season, which hopefully they do with Sainz and Leclerc, that they can hopefully boost up the Alfa Romeo and Haas side of things. So very, very exciting news for Mick Schumacher. A bit tentative on the Mazepin announcement as well. It was funny that they announced Mazepin first as well.
Who decided that?
I would definitely scratch my head. After the week that Haas has had with such great social media, I would have just maybe pondered a little bit that move.
Yeah.
To kind of go against your point of announcing it after the F2, I think they don't want to overshadow the F2 championship if he wins it, kind of thing. I think it makes sense. I think they should have done it sooner than what they have done, because going into the final weekend, it makes it's a bit of a scratch your head kind of decision. I would have done it 2 or 3 weeks ago when we kind of knew it was going to happen. I don't know if that was just kind of contract that just had to put pen to paper kind of thing, but I wouldn't have done it afterwards, because I feel like it kind of just takes away from the championship itself, knowing that he's already moving up and then securing the championship after that. It's just a great way to go out. But nonetheless, it's a great move for Haas to get a Schumacher name for a North American team that is desperately needing of money and sponsorship. And if you get the Schumacher name, it's going to come along with that. So hopefully Michael is watching very proudly of his son, because I bet he is. He's pretty damn proud of what Mick has been able to accomplish so far. So hopefully he's able to seal the deal this weekend in Bahrain for the championship that he has progressively won, F3, F2, and hopefully F2, and then maybe eventually we'll see a Schumacher lifting the F1 world title once again in Formula One. But that's a long ways down the road. So any final thoughts on the Schumacher-Mazepin moves?
I basically said everything I need to already. Just love the Schumacher move. Mazepin, I'll be watching that next season to see how it goes, definitely, because I really don't know how that's going to play out in terms of performance here. Obviously, Haas needs some money going with the Mazepin move. We'll see. It is also interesting that I think it was labeled as a multi-year thing. So
it is
something unlike what Sorokin was, where that was a one and done, whereas this one might be a multi-year thing. So definitely interesting in that regard, but definitely a big switch up here at Haas, going from a lineup that they've seen for basically their entire existence, at least with Romain Grosjean, 1 year difference with Esteban Gutierrez starting things out for Haas, and completely different driver lineup going to next year. Is going to be a very different looking team next year.
I'm hoping for success, though, where I would hate to see them kind of stumble out of the gates and then that kind of performance continues down for the remainder of the season. So I'm hopeful that they turn it around for next season, but it's going to take a lot of money to right that ship. I'll say that. So hopefully Mazepin and Schumacher have deep pockets and are able to help Haas F1 team get back to the inaugural season, how good they were in the second season after that, how good they were back to that old form that was. So that's all the F1 news that we've got for today's episode, but we've got some NASCAR news that we did not see coming as well. So we'll go into it with Brett Moffitt once again making headlines in the NASCAR world, as he's going to be racing full-time in the Truck Series for Niece Motorsports and going for the championship in the Truck Series for Niece Motorsports. In the number 45 truck, he's attempting to do the daily double Jeopardy here for Brett Moffitt, as he's going to be racing full-time in both the Xfinity Series, as was previously announced about a month ago or so, or 3.5 or whatever weeks it was. It just feels like it's all been a blur, but he's racing the O2 car for Our Motorsports in the Xfinity Series full-time, and he's going back to the Truck Series, his stomping ground, a former Truck Series champion. Should have won the championship this season if not for that late race caution. I would love to get into this a little bit, because I am scratching my head a little bit on this move for Brett Moffitt. I understand why he wants to get a bit more seat time. Obviously, going from GMS to Nice is a downgrade in the Truck Series after their most recent performance this season. Nice moving up to 3 full-time trucks now next season with Carson Hocevar, Ryan Truex, and now Brett Moffitt. Maybe they'll have a fourth truck, full-time. Or if it is, it's going to be a rotation of drivers most likely. So another addition to the Truck Series playoff field that is already tight enough as it is with the new entries that we've got going on for next season. I don't know how NASCAR is going to still limit it to 10 after this season. I would bump it up to 12 because I think it would be good for everybody involved to have it match the Xfinity Series, especially with the talent level that we've got. So we'll see if they announce something in January, because that's usually when they announce the rule changes for next season. I'm crossing my fingers that they will adjust it, because it would be a shame to have probably guys that are right on the cusp of making it. Maybe someone like Brett Moffitt, because we'll see how much he can drag that performance up, or if Nice actually improves their equipment for next season. Miss the playoffs by a couple of points or some bad circumstances, just because the playoff grid is just a bit too limited. But nonetheless, a good opportunity here for Brett Moffitt to continue to show his prowess in the lower divisions of NASCAR.
Yeah, I'm actually a lot higher on this move than you are. I like the fact that Brett Moffitt is racing as much as he can. It just gives him the most opportunity to go out and prove himself, because this is a guy that's looking to build his way back up, similarly to Ross Chastain in the past, to get back up to the Cup Series level and do so in somewhat competitive equipment. And given some of the things that we've seen recently in the Xfinity Series, and something that we'll talk about coming up here with AJ Allmendinger going full-time with Kaulig, those playoff spots have all basically been eaten up for any of those smaller teams when you look at the Xfinity Series. When you look at last year, there was basically 2 spots for small teams, and Ryan Sieg was taking the first one. It was basically who would take the second one. Well, when you look at things this year, you're adding a competitive seat there now in AJ Allmendinger, because that's one that wasn't there before. We still don't know what's happening with RCR, and who knows what's going to happen there, whether there'll be owner points again or if they'll have a full-time driver. So you're basically looking at 1, maybe even 0 spots for those small teams in the playoffs, depending on what RCR does. And when you look at the performance level of Ryan Sieg and that team last year versus the performance level of our Motorsports last year, I don't really see how you can realistically look at the Xfinity Series and say, okay, I think that we've got a legitimate shot at making the playoffs. So when I see that, and then I look down to Niece Motorsports, I feel like Moffitt has a better chance of making the playoffs or potentially winning a race with Niece than he does in Xfinity with our Motorsports. And did Nice underperform this year with Ty Majeski? Yeah, I think they did. But when you look a little bit deeper and you look at the results of somebody like a Ross Chastain for them, Ross Chastain had some really, really good results with Nice Motorsports in the Truck Series this year. He had, a top 5 at Homestead and he had 5 other top 10s. So he had 6 top 10s in total in, I think, 9 races here in the Truck Series with Nice Motorsports. And that's even without the GMS support, like it was when he went and almost won the championship for them. So that's not to say that Nice Motorsports isn't still a competitive team without the GMS support. Are they that same level? No. But I think that with the right driver, they can still be competitive. And I think Brett Moffitt might be that kind of driver that can go in there and get those consistent results and go out and try and maybe get a win, go out and make the playoffs, or be right around that cut line, because there are a lot of young drivers in good seats that are probably not going to be the same consistent level that Brett Moffitt is. And maybe he will be able to outpoint some of those guys. And maybe they do know that the Truck Series will be expanding the playoffs. We don't know that kind of stuff yet. But I actually quite like the move for Brett Moffitt. Just get as much seat time as you can in decent equipment, show what you can do, and see what opportunities come from there. I like the move. I'm excited to see him in the Truck Series and Xfinity next year. And is it a step down from the championship level with GMS? Yes. But I feel like running full-time in Xfinity is a good move there. But I definitely like the move going full-time in trucks and running for points in trucks.
I disagree. For right now, I could change my mind when I see the performance, but It just doesn't make sense for me to run. I get running full-time in trucks, but I wouldn't have put the points in the trucks. I would have gone full-time points in Xfinity just because there is an outside chance of maybe squeaking into the playoffs there. And most
I don't
likely
see it, though. I think it's more likely to do it in trucks than it is Xfinity.
Yeah, but that's expanding the playoff grid if they do that. I don't think he makes the playoffs at all in the truck series if it's 10 trucks because of what we've got going on with the competition level. I just don't see it happening unless he wins a race, which is possible with Brett Moffitt's talent.
And again, I feel like there's a better chance of winning a race with Niece and making the playoffs than it is either pointing their way in or winning a race in the Xfinity series.
I just think if you're trying to move up the ladder, you should go for Xfinity Series points and prove yourself on that scale instead of keeping yourself pigeonholed to the Truck Series because you've already proven yourself in the Truck Series. I don't think you need to go for another Truck Series championship. I think you have to orient yourself in your focus towards the Xfinity Series now and try and get into a top-level ride there instead of kind of teetering around in the Truck Series, just trying to get as much experience as you can. I get running it full time. It's only 22 races, so it makes sense. It's going to be interesting to see how they balance the schedule because they do have more off weekends in terms of at location tracks on weekends where the Cup Series and Xfinity Series are racing at different ones. So I'm be interested to see how they manage that. We don't see this at all now where a guy runs full time in both series in the lower division. So it's a lot of moving parts to make that all happen with transportation and travel and all that stuff to figure that all out and get sponsorship full time. I mean, this is a huge move for Niece Motorsports to sign somebody as prominent as Brett Moffitt for their organization. When you look at who he's partnered with and teammates and Ryan Truex and Carson Hocevar, it's a pretty big talent gap, in my opinion, to Brett Moffitt. So if you're going to look for somebody to boost up Niece Motorsports, it's a pretty good bet Brett Moffitt will do that. I just don't think that he should have run full-time for Truck Series points. I think it's a better career move to show yourself in the point side of things on Xfinity. And if you can be that first guy or even that second guy in the kind of midfield battle that is with the lower end rides in Xfinity, I think that proves a lot more than what Niece Motorsports is going to do in the Truck Series. But that's just my opinion. I don't know. I just think that he's stayed in trucks long enough here where he's proven himself that Xfinity should be his next focus here, and that should be his primary focus instead of worrying about trying to make the playoffs for the Truck Series, which he's already done on a consistent basis year in and year out. So, but I don't know. I don't really have anything else to say in terms of why my rationale is on that. It's just is what it is. I just disagree that he should be thinking that the Truck Series is his best bet to go for points. But what do you think that that's logical? I don't know.
I see where you're coming from in that regard, but the only thing is that the results that he gets in Xfinity aren't just going to be washed away because he isn't running for points. And my thing is, even if he were to somehow make the playoffs in Xfinity, which I think is an extreme long shot, honestly, what's a first round exit really going to do? Like when I look at the potential for the teams, I see much more potential in Niece Motorsports next year than I do in our motorsports in Xfinity here. And my comparison is somebody that I see a lot of career comparisons with for Brett Moffitt, and that's Ross Chastain. Ross Chastain did that mid-pack thing with JD Motorsports in Xfinity for a while, and nothing really came of it until he had a sponsorship opportunity and had an open seat at Chip Ganassi. But that wasn't necessarily because of his performance with JD Motorsports. That was because of a sponsor thing. When he went down to Niece Motorsports, the next season he got an opportunity with Kaulig because of his performance with Niece Motorsports. So when I see those kind of things, I feel like it's better to run for points in the series that you can be more competitive and potentially have a deeper run than a series where you're a long shot already to make the playoffs on anything other than a win. And that's without knowing what RCR is going to do, because they could they could go back to two cars, have one full-time driver, have a rotation car, or even have two full-time drivers. Then all of a sudden you're looking at a big name team missing out on the playoffs or something like that. So I just see a lot more potential in the Truck Series in terms of long-term success over the season. And that's why I think that is the better move, because when I look at the results, the results in Xfinity might be more important to his future success, but those results aren't going to be washed away because he's not running for points there. And so when I look at the season, run for points in the series that you can be more competitive in, and then hope that you get the results in Xfinity that prove to some of those other teams in Xfinity that you can take that next step up. I don't think that they need to see him finish 14th in points, miss the playoffs, and get some good results. And then that's the determining factor. I think if he does that, it won't matter whether he's running for points. So that's just where I see it from that side. I definitely see the argument for running Xfinity just because it is that next step up, and he's done the trucks thing for a while with that top level team. I definitely see that argument. But for me, I think it's better to run for points where you can be more competitive. And for me, that's with Niece and trucks.
I totally respect that take. I think you can go either way with it, to be honest. It's a difficult decision for Brett Moffitt. I would love to know his kind of thoughts on why he chose what he did. I think Niece Motorsports is a decent option in the truck series, a team that's looking for a bounce back year after quite honestly struggling this entire year.
Big scoop for Niece Motorsports.
Yeah, it's just I just don't know if he even makes the playoffs if the truck series don't expand the field. When I look at Eckes and Chandler Smith and all of these guys that are
we don't even know if Chandler Smith is running.
Well, most likely, I'll say that.
John Hunter Nemechek. Okay, at this point, I don't know.
That.
Yeah.
Right. So that's
course.
the Ford truck. So and then you add maybe another KBM. I think Smith is a better chance of making the playoffs in KBM equipment if he's full time than Moffitt is in Niece Motorsports.
But the 23 is falling out of the playoffs with Chase Purdy almost certainly going from Brett Moffitt to Chase.
But if
Purdy.
Rafael Lessard takes a full time ride there, then you probably replace him kind of maybe in that playoff spot. I think that Rafael Lessard could make the playoffs next season.
I agree in that regard, but I don't think it's necessarily likely at this point that he does end up running the full season. So there's a lot of different moving parts in the truck series. I hope that they do expand it because there's just so many competitive trucks that I feel like holding it to 10 is kind of doing the series a bit of a disservice. But yeah, I just feel like there's higher potential in the truck series with Niece, and what I saw Ross Chastain do last year with Niece without the GMS support gives me the belief that I think that Brett Moffitt can do similar things with that team, especially in terms of the consistency. So I like the move for Moffitt to run with Niece, maybe show that he can take that step up and help that team out a little bit. But yeah, definitely going to be interesting to see how it plays out, because if it does happen where, let's say that the truck series does get a couple more full-time guys that maybe we don't expect, or let's say KBM does end up running Eckes and Smith and all this kind of stuff, and Lessard does run full-time, all these kind of best case scenarios in terms of the competitive level of the series, and Moffitt maybe has a good season but doesn't get close to the playoffs on points or anything like that and doesn't win. And then in Xfinity, let's say he gets out and gets a fluky win at a restrictor plate or something, or sorry, super speedway. Then you're looking at it
for Xfinity series.
Sorry, see, so it counts. See, that one doesn't count. Then you would look at it and say, yeah, it was a mistake. But if I'm playing the percentages game in the series that I feel like he has the better chance of having season-long success, it's trucks for me.
Man, I just think I disagree with that, because when you look at Stuart Friesen, who had his terrible season this year, you're expecting a bounce back. Johnny Sauter could potentially still bounce back next season. There's a lot of great drive. Derek Kraus missed the playoffs. I mean, like, you got some great drivers outside of this playoff mix, adding in some new ones that will most likely make the playoffs. I think that it's going to be harder for Moffitt to even make the playoffs in the truck series than maybe it would be in the Xfinity series if we don't see any more additions in the Xfinity series. I think he could get more top 10s on a consistent base. Well, he did some good things for Our Motorsports. That's why I give it a bit more of an edge. He proved that he can get, a top 10 here or there, top 15 pretty consistently. So that's why I think the Xfinity series would be a better basis for him to go off of points. And then to your argument of, like, I don't think it kind of negates the Xfinity series points. Well, I think you don't negate the truck series kind of positions that he would run if he were to run Xfinity series full-time on points. So I think, I don't know, that's just my opinion. I think the truck series next season is the most competitive series on all three levels of the sport. So it's going to be very, very tough to add Brett Moffitt to the name to the list of people that can make the playoffs next season, just based off of Niece having to take that huge leap forward here next season in comparison to teams that had some bad luck this year and are looking for a bounce back. So, But that's just my opinion. That's just one man's opinion on this one. But any final thoughts on Brett Moffitt here before we move into AJ Allmendinger's decision?
Yeah, just finally here, regardless as to whether you think that he should be running Xfinity or trucks for points, I think that everyone agrees that it's a good move to run as many races as you can for somebody like Brett Moffitt and his situation. And I think that Nice is an interesting landing spot, and our Motorsports is as well. And Xfinity is going to be interesting to see how those two teams play out this year. Nice, a team that has since gone on their own from having GMS support and being a Championship 4 team to being much more mid-pack, but have shown flashes with top-level drivers like Ross Chastain for those series. And then for our Motorsports, they had a good first year, especially versus a lot of different teams in Xfinity that are more secure in their history in that series, but they still have a ways to go if they are going to be a team that in the future competes for a playoff spot, especially if it's staying at 12 spots for Xfinity, and if Xfinity adds a couple more full-time drivers like AJ Allmendinger, which we'll talk about here in a second.
Yeah. To that point, AJ Allmendinger, after that tease video that he did for Justin Haley about a month or so ago,
they played it well.
They did play it well. AJ Allmendinger will race full-time in the Xfinity Series for Kaulig Racing in the number 16. So that completes their trio of cars, going to a third full-time car for the first time in the team's history, partnering alongside Justin Haley, and now the newly named Jeb Burton as well, taking over for the vacating seat left by Ross Chastain in the number 10. So a great lineup over there for Kaulig. AJ Allmendinger immediately becomes a championship favorite over there based off of his prowess and the speed that he shows on the road courses, which is a highly numbered kind of track that is on the Xfinity Series calendar, especially moving forward. So he goes into the situation where he can go into the playoffs with a lot of playoff points. He won on a 1.5 miles at Atlanta this previous year as well. So he has the oval prowess as well that we haven't seen in the Cup Series when he raced for JTG. And let's not forget he raced for Team Penske as well. People forget about that, but he did at one point in time. Allmendinger's been around for a while in the NASCAR scene, and once he got kicked out of his seat at JTG just because of the lack of results, and he was only really good at Watkins. Glen Sonoma, he even really struggled on, to be honest, in comparison to some other guys that were not necessarily road course kings that he is. So Allmendinger was kind of a one-man show at the Glen, and he would kind of put himself in bad scenarios, and then he would overdrive the car, and then that one opportunity that he had each year to win a race to make the playoffs, he would kind of throw it away out of kind of his own careless driving. But he's improved himself after his kind of stint here in the Xfinity Series, where he's raced part-time for the past, I think, 2 seasons, 3 years. I'm 2018, 2019, if I'm not mistaken. But
yeah, I think so.
If it's not for the last 2, then it was 3. But nonetheless, Allmendinger has had great results down there in the Xfinity Series for Kaulig, and really is a great partnership with Justin Haley, who he's very familiar with, and Jeb Burton, who's going into a full-time season for the first time in what feels like forever for a NASCAR team. So I really like this move for AJ Allmendinger. I'm very, very excited to see him on a full-time basis, and he immediately goes up there and challenges the likes of Junior Motorsports just because of how much experience he brings and the speed that he's shown already for Kaulig, which I don't imagine that they'll take a step back next season. They're looking to move forward in the sport, and with Allmendinger behind the wheel, I think if there's a great opportunity there for him to make the championship for next season.
The question is does he get the rookie stripe? Because it's going to be his first ever full season in Xfinity, which is crazy to say, but he did come over after great Champ Car success and came over straight to the Cup Series with first Team Red Bull, and then jumping around, and then eventually landing at Richard Petty Motorsports. And then we know the time at Penske, which got cut short for extenuating circumstances. And then eventually we knew him most for his time at JTG in the 47 and the heights of the win at the Glen.
The 2014 win at the Glen.
Exactly. So, and then some disappointing results by the end of his tenure at that team. But when you hear what he said this week, and basically that by the end of the 2018 season with JTG, he wasn't having fun anymore. And you hear what he's saying now and how rejuvenated he is, and how his love for motorsports has basically been reignited. It's awesome to see for a guy like AJ, who has a lot of personality, who is great to see in part-time duty with Kaulig and now going full-time once again. I think that this is a great partnership between Kaulig and himself, and looking at next year, it's not just full-time in Xfinity either. They're planning to run the road courses and the super speedways next season. We don't know if it's going to be all of them or if it's going to be select ones of those, but that being said, I can't wait to see AJ full-time in Xfinity next year with Kaulig. He will almost certainly be one of those top favorites to be in that championship hunt. I don't know if he's necessarily the favorite just because that final race is at Phoenix. And obviously we know his strengths, and Phoenix isn't one of those tracks that go to his strengths, because even on the ovals, he's better on the mile and a half. So I can't wait to see him full-time next year. Kaulig going to 3 cars is great to see as well for the competitive level of that series as well. And hopefully Kaulig takes another step next year where they go from kind of being that slight step behind the likes of Stewart, Haas, and Penske last year, and kind of being on par or slightly even below the top level of junior motorsports last year, to being right up there in terms of performance with the rest of those guys next year. I'm super, super excited for this move. I love the move. I hope he gets some cup starts on the road courses as well. That would be great to see for Kaulig as well. And yeah, there's no way to not like this move. This is fantastic.
Yeah, and it sets himself up very nicely for 2022 if Kaulig does go full-time in the Cup Series.
I think he's a great candidate to be that first full-time guy for Kaulig.
Yeah, if they go with 1 car, or if they go to a double car operation and they want to bring Haley along board with them, I think it would be a great graduating opportunity for both guys to come, one and AJ to go back to the Cup Series on a full-time basis, and then Haley as well, just trying to match his first career win at Daytona. I can't believe he still won a race in the Cup Series, but nonetheless, this is a great move for short term, and I think for long term here for AJ, because Kaulig definitely loves him, and I think he loves Kaulig just as much as they love him. So it's a great partnership that he's found over there at Kaulig Racing, and I'm very, very excited for the Xfinity Series. Next season is shaping up to be
it's going to be so good.
So much fun, and we still have over like 75 days or something like that until the Daytona 500. So it's
even when you say that, though, that doesn't seem long enough. But I
feel like once the holidays are done and we're in the new year, then we're like, oh man, Rolex 24 is right around the corner, and then before we know it, we're previewing the next season with their playoff picks
in motorsports. So it's crazy.
There's no real end to the season, especially with Formula One going so late this year. But these announcements keep on trickling in and week out. We still have a couple of things that we're looking forward to, hopefully, before the Christmas time comes. And I'm sure they're going to shut it down over the holiday season in terms of announcements. So I'm expecting to finalize everything over the next couple of weekends. But this is a nice addition to something that maybe I wasn't necessarily expecting now. I thought if he were to get something, then it would be Haley maybe moving up to Spire, then him taking that spot, and then somebody else taking Chastain's spot in the 10. But to add a third car here, it's a great investment for Kaulig to add another competitive car on a full-time basis going for a championship. And hopefully they can prove themselves to not just be a super speedway individualistic kind of program with Haley winning basically every super speedway race. It's just incredible. But hopefully they can prove themselves on the mile and a half, the short tracks, the kind of intermediate tracks, as well as on the road courses where AJ is very much the king of those. And it's gonna be one heck of a battle between Austin Cindric and AJ Allmendinger next year. The two road course kings really in the lower division. They're going to be having some great battles next year. So I'm hoping that we see lots of fireworks. I would love to see a bit of heatedness between the two. I'm not going to lie. I think we just add that little bit of spice to the Xfinity Series. So very, very exciting news. I'm very happy for AJ Allmendinger. So Xfinity Series is lining up to be very, very good. Daniel Hemrick in the 18. You've got Cindric coming back, trying to defend his title. I mean,
Sam Mayer running half the season, Josh Berry getting a
on a full-time basis now. I mean, like we've got
there's a lot.
One heck of
who knows what's happening with RCR. Maybe we see Ty Dillon return to the series.
Oh man,
full-time. Like there's a lot still that could potentially happen.
It's just, oh man, I'm just so pumped. Oh man!
Hey, before we finish off here for Kaulig and Allmendinger, I hate to remind you, but this is another dub for me in our silly season predictions going back to August here, because I did have Kaulig expanding to a third car with the 16 and AJ Allmendinger in the Xfinity Series. I had Brett Moffitt going to the 10. Got that wrong. It ended up being Jeb Burton, but pat myself on the back here. I did have them back in August going to the third full time with AJ Allmendinger in the 16. So I'm feeling pretty good about that one.
Okay. That's just a great way to end that segment there, Kyle. Appreciate that.
Hey, you can kick my ass in fantasy. I'll kick your ass in silly season predictions.
I'll take the fantasy stuff all day long, honestly. Okay. That's one thing that I'm very much – pride is on the line for me next year. I have to
I won the final race, and by NASCAR standards, that's the championship.
We're not getting into this again. We're not getting into this again. We're not getting it. We are doing, because how much you hate the playoff system, okay? We're going to do full season-long points. That's how we do it around here, because that's how you would rather have it with the season-long champion. Well, I'm pretty sure we know who won that battle, but that's it's going to be fun next season when we do the whole year.
Yes.
And go like when we got more double races and see our strategy kind of evolve. I'm very, very excited. Exciting things to come here on the green flag. So, any final thoughts on AJ before we move into the last couple of news before we get into the weekend preview for Formula One?
Yeah, it's just great to see, and it's great to see a new owner and a newer team like Kaulig and Matt Kaulig there go ahead and continue to expand in NASCAR and continue their efforts growing. It's been great to see their progression from a mid-pack team in Xfinity with the Ryan Truex days like we talked about not too long ago. And I think Blake Cook, also raced for them as well, to their progression.
Leaf filter, he's the man.
Exactly. So, and their progression all the way from those days of being like a fringe playoff team or being just on the outside to now being championship contenders, now having 3 full-time cars with 3 guys that could realistically go out and challenge for the championship, running part-time Cup next year as well, and going forwards looking at running full-time in the Cup in the not-too-distant future. It's been great to see their progression. NASCAR needs new owners and stuff like that, and we've obviously got
a lot lately.
the stuff in the Cup Series and the guys coming straight into the Cup Series. But I think it's more important to have the guys that come in at some of the lower levels and build up their things at the lower levels, develop drivers at that level, and then go to Cup as well. So it's been great to see that we've had both here and some of the new owners going straight to Cup, and people like Matt Kaulig here continuing their progression up the NASCAR ladder.
For sure. Very, very exciting stuff for the Xfinity Series, the Truck Series now with the Moffitt deal, and then obviously, it's widely known the Cup Series moves that we've talked about at length throughout the year. So that does it for really the silly season side of things. We can briefly touch on a report that's come out. The 2021 Daytona 500 will, as highly speculated, will have limited capacity. We don't know what that percentage will be yet, but the sellout streak at 4 consecutive years.
That sounds
going to end now, unfortunately. So that's a bit of a bummer. I'm sure when we get back in 2022, when hopefully there's a solution to this virus with a vaccine, that we can have a full capacity back with the next-gen car debuting. It's going to be a must-see event in 2022, but for the upcoming season opener in the Daytona 500, that's going to have to wait. So we'll see what the percentage is. I'm sure we'll find that out before the holidays are in. If not, we'll find out in January sometime. But nonetheless, a smart move here. Florida on the smarter side of things, being a bit more cautious for once. So that's maybe a bit of optimism. But nonetheless, Daytona 500 is going to look a little bit more empty.
Yeah, I was going to say it is Florida, so who knows? Maybe it's limited capacity, and then they announce it's like 60% or something like that because it is Florida. But
99%, we're limiting
exactly.
it.
But it is a big facility, so there will still be a decent amount of people that will be able to attend. It's just doing it safely because by the time that the Daytona 500 rolls around, like you said, 75 days you said it was?
Something like around that, yeah.
That's not a long time away when you think about it in the grand scheme of things. And by that time, hopefully we'll start to have the introduction to some of these vaccines that have been talked about recently. And hopefully we can start that process by then. But by no means will it be any kind of situation where we can have a large group in any kind of condensed space. And it's good to see that Florida, for one, is taking this step here. Remains to be seen what that percentage is, but hopefully, yeah, as you mentioned, by the time that we get to the 2022 Daytona 500, hopefully we'll be at least close enough to normal where we can have a close to, if not full capacity for the introduction of the next gen car, because it would be disappointing, to say the least, if we get to that point and we're still having to deal with some of this fallout.
Yeah, but let's not forget how the 2013 Daytona 500 was when we had the current generation debut. Maybe we want limited capacity for the 2022 Daytona 500 with how that one played out. But nonetheless, we're looking at an exciting 2021 schedule, whether that's with fans in the stands at some places or not. Very, very pumped for the calendar to turn over to not just the new year because of how crappy this one has been, in all honesty, but also for the racing side of things, it's very, very optimistic with what we've got going on. So that's the NASCAR side of things, but we also have a little bit of the local side of things to end the news and notes portion, the iconic Snowball Derby. If you didn't know, this is where Eric Jones beat Kyle Busch to. No, I'm just kidding. I'm kidding. No, I'm just saying that because every time we bring, yeah, fair enough. If you know, you know. But the Snowball Derby is going to be on this weekend. The kind of last event for the short track side of things for the year. They're in Pensacola, Florida, for the Five Flag Speedway, excuse me. And we've got some Cup names in the field: Kyle Busch, Chase Elliott, Chandler Smith, Derek Kraus, Noah Gragson, Grant Enfinger, Carson Hocevar, and Ty Majeski, very known within the short track side of things, some of those names, and they consistently run it. Most of these guys have won the Snowball Derby in the past. Kyle and Chase, two-time champions. Gregson won, I think, in 2018 as well. So, and if I'm not mistaken, Majeski's won it, but I could be wrong on that.
Sounds right.
But some great names for the 300 lap event for the Snowball Derby. Very, very excited to see how it all plays out. You've got your local short track drivers that go up against the big NASCAR Cup Series, Xfinity, and Truck Series names. So it's always a great event to see the clips and stuff that are shared on Twitter throughout the race. So hopefully Kyle comes out on top of that, just for myself to end the 2020 year that has just been abysmal. But nonetheless, Chase Elliott, the Cup Series champion down there, going to be running the Rolex 24 as well. Busy off season for Chase starts here. Going to be running the Chili Bowl as well. I mean, it just doesn't stop for Chase Elliott right now. This is just the beginning of many of the big races that are outside of the NASCAR scene for him in the off season. So Travis Braden is the defending race winner. He will also be in this week's event. So we'll see how that all plays out. We've got the race on 2 p.m. Eastern Sunday. I'll be not tuning in because it costs a lot of money to watch it, but I'll be paying attention throughout updates and stuff that we see online. So what are you thinking going into the Snowball Derby weekend? Something we don't get to talk about too much with the local short track side of things, but some great drivers in there for entertainment.
Yeah, I'm excited to follow things this year. I've never paid attention to the Snowball Derby before, so excited to follow along with that process this weekend. Ty Majeski is not won the Snowball Derby before.
Interesting.
So maybe
he wins everything except for that.
Exactly. So maybe he can go out and add that one to his resume this weekend. But yeah, a lot of familiar names there. And those are just the names from the top 3 series of NASCAR. There's a bunch of different ARCA starters and whatnot in the field as well. Plus all of your regular short track guys, such as your Travis Bradens that will be in the series.
Is Josh Berry in it?
As well. Josh Berry, I did not see on the entry list.
Interesting.
So yeah, excited for this one this weekend. Obviously, the main thing that we'll be paying attention to is the Sakhir Grand Prix, but it's a nice way to round out the year on the short track kind of thing. Snowball Derby, excited to pay attention to it for the first time. Don't know if we'll be able to watch it live, as you mentioned there, but I'll definitely be paying attention along, watching for updates and watching for highlights, of course.
Yeah, I followed it for the past couple of years, mainly just because of how often they bring up that damn Eric Jones thing. But it's always fun to see the highlights and stuff. And it's a long race, 300 laps, half-mile track. So we've got kind of an Xfinity Series length race here at Pensacola Speedway. So I know for myself, I've heard Kyle say that this is the most enjoyable kind of cars that he drives every year. So we'll see if he can get back to victory lane at the Snowball Derby, become a 3-time winner. And if Chase Elliott, if Chase Elliott can become a 3-time winner, I didn't actually know that he had won it twice. I knew he had won it once, but 2 times for Chase Elliott is very, very cool for Chase Elliott. So we'll see if the Cup Series champion can put an exclamation point on his already incredible A+ season that we gave him in our grading episode. So we'll let you know the results of how that all unfolded on Monday's episode. That's all the news and notes that I've got from the past couple of days. A busy one late here at the beginning of December. The holiday season is upon us, and we're getting lots of news and wishes that were not on our list that we are unexpectedly getting here. I definitely had George Russell and Mick Schumacher in these respective seats on my Christmas list, and it actually came true. So thank you very much, Santa, for giving us a great start to the holiday season. So let's get into our preview of the Bahrain International Circuit.
Okay.
Sakhir Grand Prix. Yeah, I caught myself that time. I mean, there's not really too much to preview. Nothing really going into this weekend. A new layout, obviously the outer one, the square layout that we've kind of talked about before on this show. So not an oval. I saw Schwartzman say more of a NASCAR kind of theme track a quote. But obviously they haven't watched enough NASCAR because it's not really that similar.
It's not even close.
But it's as close as we're going to get in Formula One is the point. So
Monza has an oval. Who knows?
Yeah, fair enough. All right. With your cheeky comments today.
I'm sorry.
Guy's in a jokey mood, but we've got great storylines that we've already discussed with the driver swaps. George Russell, Jack Aitken, Lewis Hamilton out this weekend for testing positive for COVID-19. And then we've also got Pietro Fittipaldi in there for Romain Grosjean. So what are we thinking here, Kyle, for expectations? There's only so much we can preview with this. We've obviously got the F2 Championship as well, 14 points for Schumacher and Eilert. But initial thoughts coming into this weekend for the Sakhir GP.
Yeah, I'm expecting maybe some attrition here. As I mentioned early on, it's been a unique season, but it's been a bit of a compact schedule. And this is a power-heavy track. There's a lot of on-throttle time with some long straights here. Short lap time, which means a lot of laps. I believe it's 87 laps. So there's going to be a lot of
they're meant to be sub 60 lap, sub 60 second lap time.
So there's going to be a lot of wear and tear on those engines, and I think we might see a couple of power unit failures, and whether they come at the top end of the grid and completely shakes things up, or if it happens at the bottom half of the grid and it isn't anything that maybe shakes up the points or anything like that, remains to be seen. But just like to the last race at the same circuit, just a different layout, 3 laps to go, Sergio Perez on pace for a podium, his engine expires. And there's going to be a lot more on throttle time at this circuit as well. So if something like that's happening to a Mercedes engine, which is the most reliable on the grid, we could be in for a treat this weekend in terms of some fireworks. But yeah, that's what I'm mainly watching for, other than like the main storylines of some of the different driver shakeups there and the constructors battle as well. It's that attrition. And are we going to see people fall out of the race because of engine problems? It's such a unique circuit. We've never seen anything like it in modern F1. Just being sub 60-second lap times, so much of the lap being on the straights as well. I'm excited to see how it plays out.
I think there could be 2 different ways this race kind of goes. Either it's very stale and it's completely boring, or it's a chaotic race with retirements and strategy and whatnot. We don't know how the tires are going to wear this weekend, if it's going to be limited tire wear just because of lack of cornering and cornering speed. So they could probably go on a one-stop here if the tire length goes that way. Yeah. But
a lot of laps, though. So
a lot of laps. So we'll see if fresh tires really do pay off, and just trying to get traction to go onto the long straights that is. And it's a bit of a tight little middle sector there to try and get the car to turn. So you can probably make some time up there with some fresher tires. But beyond that, it's pretty similar to the actual layout of the Bahrain circuit. It's just less corners. So, I mean, I think it'd be okay. do you want to do over under here in terms of?
I'm always down for some over unders.
So I'm over under. So over under retirements for the Grand Prix. Do you want? Let's just say like 4.5. Well, let's say 4.5. I think is probably a good number, just based off of attrition and maybe a first lap kind of carnage, because people are going to be pretty aggressive going into the first corner there. So over under 4.5. What are you thinking?
I think you've set the over under very well, because I was going to say 4 or 5 retirements. I think just because of, as you mentioned there probably will be some kind of contact in the first lap, whether that's the first corner or at some point there, because there are some pretty heavy braking zones as well, some opportunities to maybe dive it in on the first lap when it is still congested there, and the attrition element as well. So I will say that it barely hits the over there for the retirements. I will say that there are 5 total retirements in this race.
Okay. Dang, I don't know. I'd set it up too hard for myself here.
You set it well, I'll be honest.
I'll go, just to switch it up, I'll go under, but I definitely would have picked over if you hadn't picked over. I think
it's going to be right in that 4 or 5 range.
Yeah, I think whether that's the new guys coming in and maybe making some mistakes like Aitken or Fittipaldi and something goes wrong, or we just see some kind of engine expiries or something go wrong throughout the race, I think it's definitely likely that there could be a 4 or 5 retirements in this one, but we could just be wrong and there could be none, right? There's no that possibility, right? So, I mean, okay, do you have any over-unders? I mean, it's just basically, safety car over or under 0.5? I mean, or do we think we get one? Do we end the race under caution or under safety car?
Okay, I'll say we don't end under safety car, but I'll say that we get one safety car for somebody's engine expiring and them having to clear it. So I'll say that.
I'm going to say that we don't. I think we just get a whole bunch of VSCs because it is such, all over the place. I think they'll find a place to park up. But I don't know. Do you have any? I don't really have any other than the retirements, just to kind of – this could be like the new fantasy segment for Formula One. I don't know.
Any over-unders here in a second, but let's do like our race predictions quickly, and then I'll see if I can come up one. So
qualifying.
Obviously, start with qualifying here. I'll let you go first, because usually you toss it over to me. Because we've got a little bit different here. It's not just your usual cast of characters. Give me your front row here for the start of the Sakhir Grand Prix.
All right, I'm going to go with George Russell on pole. Okay. I'm going to go with George Russell on pole, and alongside him, we've got Valtteri Bottas. I'm not going to go too crazy. I think it's going to be very close. Okay. But I'm going to go with George Russell on pole, and then Verstappen in third is I think it's a logical bet. But I could see Verstappen going up to second, Bottas sliding over, and then Russell back to third. I think that could be likely. I think that the front three is almost certainly, but I mean anything can happen. But I think Russell goes out there and shows up Bottas and goes in there and gets pole for the Sakhir Grand Prix.
Okay, I like it. I won't go that bold with it. I'll say Bottas on pole, Russell second, and then I'll obviously, I think both of us would have Verstappen third in that case. But I just think that just because Bottas is just that much more familiar, and he is good over one lap, there's not usually huge gaps between Hamilton and Bottas in qualifying, unless it's in the rain or anything like that, in which case Hamilton is just otherworldly, even more so. Bottas is good over one lap, so I'll say that Bottas still gets the edge in qualifying over Russell, but we'll see how things go into the race here.
Yeah, so that means that we've got Bottas and Russell on the front row for both of us. Do we see a Mercedes winning this race, Kyle, or are we thinking Red Bull could sneak up there and maybe get up there and get a win for the second time this season? What's your podium looking like? We'll say that. I think we can get the trio done instead of just the race pick. We can go with a bit of a podium here. So since I went first for qualifying, who you got for the race?
Do you want me to go 3-1 or 1-3?
3-1.
3-1. Okay, well then I'm starting it off with a bit of a bang here. I'll say, getting some redemption for the last Grand Prix, I'll say Sergio Perez finishes third on the podium here. Get some redemption. I like the Mercedes power engine here going into the weekend. I got to say, they had the bad luck last weekend with the engine expiring. I don't see it happening again, although who the hell knows. But I think it would be some pretty bad luck if a Mercedes engine expires for the same guy back-to-back weekends. So that being said, I like it going into this weekend, and Racing Point has been right up there all year long. So I like Sergio Perez to get on the podium there. Second, screw it, I'll do it. Valtteri Bottas second, and George Russell goes out and gets the victory with his maiden Grand Prix for Mercedes.
That's great. So you think Verstappen doesn't get a podium this weekend?
No, I do not.
Okay, you think Mercedes just overpowers everybody with the straights? Yeah, fair enough. I'm gonna go with Bottas third. Okay, I'm gonna say Verstappen jumps him in second. I think they're gonna go pretty aggressive with Verstappen this weekend. The race pace of the Red Bull has been very, very good. And we got George Russell winning this race this weekend. I really, really wanted to see happen, and I think it could happen. I think there's a good chance it could, but I could see Bottas and Russell swapping places. But I think Russell will end up on the podium this weekend. Where that is to be determined, I guess. But I think it's going to be tough for Verstappen to not get a podium this weekend, in my opinion. Just based off of the huge opportunity that is in front of him. He's basically been second fiddle to Hamilton the entire year. It would be hilarious if he falls second fiddle to George Russell. But nonetheless, I think it's going to be a great race. So I totally agree with your Sergio Perez pick as well, because I think
I went a little bit bold on that one.
I think it's good, though, because I think we could see a sneaky guy get on the podium this weekend. I'm not going to lie. I think Perez is probably a good shout. I didn't want to go with McLaren having a podium this weekend after having a fourth and fifth last weekend. I think it's just a bit too much to ask of McLaren to do that. Renault kind of disappointed me last weekend, so I probably wouldn't go with them just based off their engine power as well. So I think Mercedes is going to be very, very strong this weekend. So where are we thinking for Jack Aitken and Petro Fittipaldi as well? Because they are making their F1 debuts. So are we thinking close to points, or maybe even a retirement for these guys?
Oh, this is a tough one because it really all depends on how many retirements you do have if you do think that they finish the race. Because I think if there's only like 3 or 4 retirements, then you're going to be pretty hard-pressed for either one to get up close to the points, I think. But if you get something a bit more extreme, say there's a multi-car accident on the first lap that involves some cars that are up in the points, and then say that there are some power unit struggles over the race, and let's say you get 6, 7, maybe even more retirements, then I think you're looking at a possibility. I'll go a bit more reserved. I'll say that neither do get points, and I'll go a little bit risky potentially. And I will say that Aitken outfinishes both Latifi and Fittipaldi.
I think Fittipaldi is going to retire this weekend. I think them having to rebuild the car after last week's it doesn't lead to good things usually. From just after watching F1 for almost 6 years or 7 years now, it's crazy to think it's been that long. But I think when they rebuild the car, I mean, it's not the same case as when they on the Saturday and the qualifying or the practice that they wreck it, and then the Sunday they usually do retire just based off of having something go wrong. They have had a week to rebuild this car, but I think inexperience for Fittipaldi, it's a huge step up to go to F1 for a one-off race like this, maybe even 2. So I think he retires, and I think Aitken, I think this is Latifi's big weekend here. I think he's going to fall short behind Aitken's going to fall short behind Latifi. So, but I think they'll both finish the Williams. I'm hoping that they do. I think it'd be a great battle between the two. Show a good benchmark for Aitken to see if Latifi has struggled as much as he has this year in comparison to George Russell. I think this is a huge opportunity for Latifi to show off his pace in qualifying in comparison to a teammate that is just so good in qualifying. So a very, very exciting weekend with a lot of different storylines to keep your eye on, both at the back of the grid and at the front. I mean, it's just going to be one heck of a weekend, and it could transition into the Abu Dhabi Grand Prix as well if Hamilton is not 100% and is cleared to come back for that race. So we could be looking at the final 2 races of the season looking like this in terms of the lineup, or we could be looking at it going back to exactly what it was at the Bahrain Grand Prix in Abu Dhabi. But any final thoughts for this one on this episode? We've got we'll do the F2. Do we think Mick Schumacher clinches it, or does Callum Ilott snag the championship away from him in the last 2 races of the season?
I'll stick with it. I'll say that Mick Schumacher doesn't get a win this weekend, but he does enough to clinch the championship, and he does win F2. But let's see here. I'll go with a bolder one here, and I'll say Yuki Tsunoda finishes 3rd in the F2 championship, jumping up from 5th. It's all super.
Oh yeah,
super
five points.
There.
5 points. Yeah. I'm gonna go with.
Give me your championship pick first off.
Oh, Schumacher, 100%. I'm locking that in.
100%. Okay.
100%. I better not be jinxing the kid. I swear to God. If that comes back to bite me here, man, I can't take another one of these. Fine, 99.9%. So then it leaves a little bit of room for error there. But I really like.
See, now you just opened the door.
He's got a level head, so I think that he's going to get it done this weekend. And to your point earlier, I don't think Ilott wants to win the championship this season and go into.
It's better for him if he doesn't.
It's better for him if he doesn't win the championship. So I think that has to be in the back of his mind. Sure, he would love to go out there and prove something to beat Schumacher, but next season, I think he's the sure favorite to win it next year with Schumacher being gone and Mazepin in 3rd there being gone as well now. So it's a better career move for Ilott to kind of put off a year here and then maybe look at someone to take the Antonio Giovinazzi seat if he struggles next season at
or Raikkonen if he retires.
Or if Raikkonen retires. So it would be a smarter career move long term here for Ilott to not win the championship, but saying that they're a racing driver, they're an athlete, they want to go out there and win everything. So I doubt that that's really come into play. But from our perspective as a fan, I don't know what the heck you're thinking, Ilott, if you're going for the championship again. But nonetheless, I'm thinking Schumacher and Ilott, obviously 1 and 2 there in that order. I'm going to go Schwartzman gets 3rd, and then Mazepin drops down to 4th.
Okay.
And Tsunoda stays in 5th. So that's my my top 5 for F2. So just a 1 swap, 3-point difference going into this weekend between Schwartzman and Mazepin. So that's it for the kind of preview. There's not too much in terms of practice going on.
Let me toss in my over-under here. I got one.
Oh,
here.
You got one?
I got one.
Okay.
We've got a lot of laps, and it's a short circuit. So my over-under, cars that finish on the lead lap, 4.5.
Holy.
87 laps, under 60-second lap time. If it stays clean, there's going to be not a lot that finish on the lead lap. But if there is potentially some safety cars or anything, that'll bunch things back up. So it might not get as spread out. So we'll see how things go. I will remind you that the Portuguese Grand Prix did only have 4 cars finish on the lead lap. So that's the fewest that have finished so far this season. So over-under set at 4.5.
I'm going to go over. I'm gonna say 6 finish on the lead lap.
Okay.
I'm gonna if you had said it to 5.5, I probably would have taken the under, to be honest. But I'll take 6 here. I think oh man, that's tough. The Mercedes is 2, Verstappen 3. Man, I could see Albon getting lapped. That's the weird thing. I could see Perez finishing on the lead lap. One of the McLaren.
I'll say that I'm taking the under. I'll say that 4 finish on the lead lap. The 2 Mercedes, Verstappen, and Perez.
Okay. Yeah, I'm going to still take the over. I'll still say 6. I'm just optimistic on that.
Hey, that's good because for the over-under, we both took both options. So
we're going to be right. We're not going to be our championship weekend for the NASCAR weekend. We have got, maybe we should do that instead for the championship picks because we can't do that for damn. But this time around, we are for sure 100% this thing. We are going to be guaranteed to be right unless they have a 0.5 somewhere that half a car finishes across the line and we just, I can totally see it happening. But nonetheless, any final thoughts to end this episode that has been jam-packed full of news, but it's been a fun one.
Yeah, a surprisingly fun one. I wasn't expecting this much to happen this weekend. No. We were planning on doing another one of these fun, different episodes with maybe a couple of news notes beforehand, preview the F1 race, and then do something a little bit different the rest of the way. And the motorsports world said, no, we got you this week. And hell, even Kevin Magnussen confirmed that he's going to IMSA and all that stuff this week. So a lot happened this week. I'll give the famous curse of, we expect this to be the last week of news, because then that means that we'll get more news going forwards, which is always fun. But yeah, another fun week, some ups and downs to say the least. We like the news. We like George Russell being in a Mercedes, but we wish it wasn't under these circumstances. Same with Pietro Fittipaldi getting the seat at Haas, and of course then Aitken at Williams. It's unfortunate that they're under the circumstances that they are. But that being said, I can't wait to watch it. It's a new circuit, a very different layout. Very unique circuit in that regard to the F1 calendar. We're going to be seeing sub 1 minute times, certainly, and who knows what's going to happen. There's going to be a lot of different stuff to watch this weekend. Plus, of course, the Snowball Derby to pay attention to as well.
Yeah, we've got F1 1.5, F1.5 basically this weekend, with Hamilton not in the starting grid. The rest of the drivers have a shot this weekend, so I'm sure they're looking forward to that. But we're obviously, as we start off the top of the show, we're wishing well to both Romain Grosjean and his recovery, and Lewis Hamilton as well. Hopefully, they're back behind the wheel of their cars for the Abu Dhabi Grand Prix to end the 2020 season. This is the penultimate weekend of racing, Kyle, for the 2020 kind of major three motorsports that we talk about regularly. So getting down to the end of things here, and we'll definitely have more covered here at the Green Flag. Make sure to subscribe to the YouTube channel. Make sure to go follow us on Instagram and Twitter as well. We've got great stuff on there. Once things start to slow down with school here, I will start to get back on the graphics grind. If George Russell wins this weekend,
you have to.
I will make the time to make a George Russell graphic. And if something else happens that is crazy enough to throw in a graphic, maybe we'll see. But nonetheless, we've got lots of different things covered here at the Green Flag. So it's been a fun one. Crazy weekend full of news, so very much excited for the Sakhir Grand Prix and also the outcome from the Snowball Derby. So for this one, I've been Lukas Wacker. He's been Kyle Cushman. Signing off for now. We will talk to you Monday after the Sakhir Grand Prix.